world. This is the AwokenWord podcast, and I am your host, Anuj. Today's episode is a little bit different than many, for a bunch of reasons. For starters, this episode is much, much shorter than all other episodes. That said, I would argue that this is one of the most important episodes we'll ever put out. In today's episode, I'm speaking with my son, and I do want to share something with you all here. This conversation that I just had with him was very special. Many nights he'll run into our bed at some point in the middle of the night or early morning. We woke up and we're still a bit sleepy. And we cuddled and we talked about a bunch of things. And the night before, my wife and him had gone out, and he actually happened to pass by a protest that was going on, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And he's been hearing about Israel and Gaza at school. It's in the air. It's in the news. Kids talk about it. Kids have opinions. And so he was wondering what this protest was about. And things just kind of went from there. This conversation is quite literally my son and I cuddled up in bed. And just as the conversation started, I just had a feeling I should record this on my phone, and so I did. What you'll hear is the very first time that I heard him say any of these things. You can tell that we're actually both quite sleepy still. We're just coming out of our slumber. You will, at points, maybe even hear the rumbling in our stomachs picked up in the audio. Everything that he actually says here is on the spot. It comes from deep within him, from the mind of a 9-year-old. We often have really wide, sweeping philosophical conversations about everything: the world, evolution, science, Star Wars, Spider-Man, nuclear deterrence, CRISPR gene splicing. But this was the very first time that we had a conversation about war, specifically, and even more specifically about the situation in Israel and Gaza. I had never heard him say any of these things before. I was overwhelmed and in awe of him throughout this conversation. I've thought long and hard about whether or not I wanted to share this conversation. But I realized that at age 9, if my son, and for that matter, most or all other children, have enough humanity and enough sense to empathize with the suffering of other human beings, whether they be Israeli or Palestinian, and that if someone so young can see a rational path forward, that it is an absolute travesty and shame that we as quote-unquote grown-ups and the leaders that we allow to represent us can't see that path, or rather choose not to see that path. My son doesn't know or care about any of the politics in the Middle East. His only concern is for human lives and for their future. I am in awe of the level of humanity that children hold naturally. And somehow, over time, the world just chips away at that humanity. But it is upon each and every one of us to keep that fire of empathy and compassion alive. And with that, I give you here my sleepy early morning conversation with my son. This podcast is my humble attempt to bring a grain of sand of goodness rising to the beach of human experience. Inspiring. This podcast is my love letter to all of you. The AwokenWord podcast. Okay, so yesterday you and Mommy saw a protest, right? Mm-hmm. And what was the protest for?
Is people from Israel to open up the Gaza Strip.
And you were asking me, why are people protesting, right? Or you were saying you didn't understand why they're doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there was something that you asked me, what happens if people are protesting and the people in Gaza don't hear it? What were you asking?
Do you think if nobody, like, really helps the people in Gaza Strip, do you think they'll go extinct?
That's exactly what we cannot have happen. Those people in Gaza are human beings just like anybody else. They have families and kids, and they have dreams, and they have all of the same wishes for their life that anybody anywhere does. The world can't let that happen. But do you think that that's a concern?
Probably.
So who needs to make a decision? Whose mind do we need to change?
Other people, so they can raise awareness and help.
Oh, you mean like get other people to be out and just support to say that they need to find a way to help the people of Gaza?
And help by, like, lending them some stuff or something for protection.
What kind of stuff?
Not weapons, but things that they could use to protect themselves. Or they could send boats to the Gaza Strip so that they can come to their country for that time.
Oh, so that they can find shelter or a place to be?
And until Israel and Palestine find peace with each other.
How long would that be?
Years, months, however long it takes for them to decide whose territory is what.
Do you think that's fair to the people who live there?
No. But it's the only option if they want to stay alive.
But some countries are not helping. If you had a magic wand and you could fix the whole situation right away, what would you do?
I would take away their weapons.
Whose weapons?
Both of them, so they could actually have a conversation instead of just war. Same with Ukraine and Russia.
I wish somebody who thought like you would be running countries. It'd be much better to have a conversation, right, than to just fight with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when you're older in your lifetime that countries will do a better job of talking than fighting?
Probably not, because they'll just design stronger, better weapons that could kill nations. Until they actually find a proper way.
But don't we have to change people's minds first?
Yeah, but that's something their governments have to do.
But eventually, when you're older, when you're grown up and other kids like you are grown up, you'll be the government, right? How can all the people that you know, like your friends and stuff, do things differently?
I'd probably give them resources if that's what they want.
From this country?
Yeah.
You're very generous. It's like that saying, I guess, because you always do that. Sharing is caring, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the people who are doing bad things, who are hurting other people, and making excuses for why they do it? What should happen to those people?
Or we could take away their weapons when they're sleeping.
When they're sleeping, just take their weapons?
Yeah.
That's a tricky plan. But what do you think we should spend more time thinking about, the past or the future?
Future or the present.
Why?
They should just forget and help each other.
What if it's not easy for them to forget?
They could work towards it. Because if something bad happens in the past, then they'll just want revenge for the rest of their life, and that's how most wars start. And then if they forget about it and they're just kind to the world, it will be better for everybody.
How do you want the world to be different when you grow up?
No war.
You've been listening to the AwokenWord podcast. There's a lot of ways that you can support AwokenWord. First of all, definitely subscribe to the podcast. We are available on all major podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And of course, all of this content is available on our website at www.awokenword.com. You can also connect with us over social media. On Instagram, we are at AwokenWord Podcast. On YouTube, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter, we are at AwokenWord. If you've liked what you've heard, however you see fit, spread the word. Like many others, we're trying to build a better world through meaningful conversation. And if you'd like to discuss any of the topics or the conversations that we've had here in your own podcasts, please feel free to do so. If you have questions, if you have recommendations for new guests or new topics, definitely do reach out. As always, thank you for listening. Until next time, this is Anuj. Peace out.